Hello, welcome to my studio here in France. I thought I'd shoot a little film about art, about my relationship with art, how art began in my life. And it's probably very similar to how it began in most people's lives. We all start as artists in a way. As children we're much more liberated and free to express ourselves without judgment being either our judgment or anyone else's. And so we're much more liberated in ourselves as children to be expressive. I've noticed over the years that when I'm teaching, a lot of people have trouble in the first instance getting permission within themselves to be expressive. There is a barrier, a fear, whatever it is. It takes a little while to get people to express themselves. That's probably true in life generally, whether people are expressing themselves through words or music or art or drawing or just confidence. This world is a strange place and many things happen that rob us of our confidence, our strength, and life throws its arrows at us, and we keep reinventing ourselves and rebuilding ourselves into new versions of ourselves, and that's all growth, and that's fantastic. And that's actually the same thing in the things that we're doing. That's what's great about art. It's the same process in art. Consistent reinvention, experimentation, and discovering new things. That's what it is for me anyway. When I was a child, the first thing I did, like most people, was colouring in. I loved colouring in. It just was so meditative, and what a pleasure! What a way to spend time. It just, the world is kind of crazy around you, and you can just go into this little space where you're drawing, and nothing else matters. Where you're colouring in, nothing else matters. And I spent hours doing that as a young child, and so did all my friends, so did the people around me. And I remember a particular incident which was at preschool, and I sat next to a girl. We must have been 4 or 5 years old, no older than that. And I sat next to this girl and I was colouring in, and we started communicating. And like with all human beings, you have these moments where you catch each other's eye. This can happen from a very young child to a very old person. And you just relate to that person for a moment. And that relationship can last a matter of seconds or a lifetime. Now with this particular relationship, we connected, I remember, and I offered her to colour in my colouring in book. A kind of moment of generosity, a moment of wanting to connect with this other young girl. And she gratefully received my colouring in book and grabbed some pencils or felt tips, whatever they were, and proceeded to scribble all over the marks on the page. And I must confess, I was horrified. I was absolutely horrified. This was kind of like my first girlfriend. I think we'd been together all of 5 minutes. But that was the end. There was no way we could continue after she had committed such a heinous crime. I was devastated. She went over the line in my colouring in book. Now, I look back now and think, my goodness, I was an obsessive at the age of, what, 4 or 5 years old. And I now consider this moment where this girl bravely scribbled all over this page with absolute abandon as my first art lesson, because there was I creating or doing my art, playing with colour within the boundaries of these lines that had been printed on the page for me to contain my colours within. And along came this girl and went, no, to hell with that, I'm just going to express myself, I'm just going to chuck some colour on this page. And it took me absolutely years to understand that that was actually a really positive and powerful lesson. So fast forwarding another 2 or 3 years, I'm a young boy of, I don't know, 7 years, 8 years, and like many young boys, there suddenly becomes a fascination with drawing dragons. Now, I don't know quite where that comes from. Historically, I guess we've got this kind of relationship with our medieval past, our ancestral past, and there was a bit of an obsession with dragons, and it has come through into modern day. I mean, dragons seem to appear in adult programs now, which is kind of strange. I was never able to watch Game of Thrones. I thought the idea of a medieval world where small kingdoms fought each other and had power struggles within each other. It's a great concept. It is our history. It's what's happened. It's where we've come from. But the moment dragons came in, I was lost. It didn't do it for me, I'm afraid. If anyone out there wants to make another film about medieval war, fantastic, but leave out the dragons. But, however, if you're a young boy, dragons are fascinating. So they're great to draw. So you've got this subject where you can make up the most gnarled face, the most kind of fierce expression, the most sharp claws, the longest, most forked tail, the muscular structure, the strength, the spikes on the back. And that also ties in with a young boy's fascination with dinosaurs and wild creatures. So you have this fascination with mystical animals, and I would draw loads of them. And my son does now, my youngest son, my eldest son, who's grown up, I think he did as well. But less so, my youngest son is an absolute glutton for a dragon and draws fantastic dragons. In fact, he's gone far further than me, and he makes origami dragons, which are immensely complicated, 1,000 plus fold dragons. And he shows me these things, and they're just amazing. But for me, when I was a child, it was drawing dragons and getting into the detail of them, the scales, and they were very tight detailed. And I guess that goes back to the girl who went over the line in my colouring book. I hadn't learnt that lesson yet. I was still staying within the line, except now I was creating my own lines rather than following the lines in the colouring in books. So I drew dragons for a while. I also drew, I had a model, Christmas, a model of, I think it was Spartacus, and Action Men models. And I remember I had an Evel Knievel motorbike man, he jumped and things like that. So I'd draw these toys. There were early kind of gaming toys, little models of army figures or tanks or cars or aeroplanes, all those kind of dinky toys from the past. I was a child in the 70s, so that was the kind of stuff we had. And Tonka toys came along, and all these things were fantastic to draw. So I used to draw just about anything I could. I'd spend hours in my room drawing away, and that was how I spent my time. I got into watching films. Films start becoming very fascinating. I think films really took a shift in the late 70s and became much more accessible. Cinemas were more accessible, more films seemed to be being made, or at least I seemed to be exposed to more of them. And we'd had TV in the house for a while by then, and more films were coming on the TV screen. And Christmas was always a festival of new films. They're everywhere. You can access films every day, everywhere now. Just in that time through the 70s, films were kind of special then, because they were rare. It was kind of, oh, have you seen this? Have you seen that? It was because it was not so straightforward accessing films. They weren't available. And I remember a film, Jaws, came out. Steven Spielberg, I think, was responsible for that. And a very scary film when you're a young boy, but also, wow, this great big shark. It was really exciting. And seeing these kind of turquoise seas and warm sun. I grew up in Britain where it was still raining all the time. And so the world, through the TV screen, the world started to grow. And along came this creature, this modern day dinosaur in this film. And the story of the three men battling against it. And it absolutely gripped me. I thought it was fantastic at the time. So fantastic, I decided to draw a massive Jaws on the wall of my bedroom. Now, in my bedroom, my bed was up against the wall along one side, and I drew this shark. It was about 7 foot long. It was a bit longer than the bed, and certainly about twice as long as me. And I drew it on the wall, and I slept next to this shark for years. And he was drawn using pencils, soft pencils, and he was really muscly. I think I picked up some of the detail from drawing Spartacus and the action men and things, and I put these muscles onto Jaws. So Jaws wasn't kind of as slick and smooth as sharks of the wonderful deep oceans would be and are. My Jaws was kind of like a Spartacus Jaws. He was like a Jaws that had been down the gym, the underwater gym. And so he had lots of rippling muscles in between his fins and things. So it was weird. I slept next to this bizarrely disproportionate, oddly bodied shark for a number of years until I finally decided I was getting too old for that and it was time to move on. Looking back now, I realise I was quite a sensitive child and was easily overwhelmed by big occasions or large groups of people or an overstimulus. And I realised that when I went to secondary school, which was a comprehensive in Brighton, in East Sussex in the UK, it was a big rough school, and I went from this kind of cosy junior school where we were all kind of supported and thrown into this crazy comprehensive, which was really quite violent and full of bullies and a very strange place to kind of find yourself. And like many people of my generation, it was a very confusing time. And I found myself getting in with the wrong people and doing the wrong stuff, and yeah, just generally behaving badly, having a great time on a skateboard, which was my other real passion back then. But I still spent my time in my room painting and drawing. But at school, I was getting into trouble, and before long, I think it was around 15, I seemed to find myself getting thrown out of the odd class here and there for misbehaving and being sent to the art room. And I don't know how it happened really, but it seemed to me that I kept getting sent to the art room, and before long I just went to the art room. And so it seemed to me that quite a high percentage of my time at school, instead of going to the lessons that other people were going to, I'd just go to the art room. And I'm not sure how clear this memory is and how much time I spent in there. I certainly got to know my art teacher very well. He was a lovely guy, very helpful, very encouraging, and it was great. It suited me down to the ground. And he encouraged me to go on to sixth form college rather than stay at the school, which I think really was the right decision for me, because like I say, it was a crazy place, and I certainly wasn't finding myself there. At sixth form college, I clearly remember my arts tutor, a guy called Phil Everett. He was an interesting character. He encouraged us to understand art in a more historic sense, i.e. until then, art for me had been, how do I make this? How do I draw that? It was just practical, and it was all judged on how accurately to a photograph, in a way, accurately to real life. That was the benchmark. You know, how good were you? How close were you to a photographic image? So I went to sixth form college, and Phil opened all our eyes really to art. I hadn't really had exposure to the history of artists through the years, and he taught us about art history. I remember we did a big project on the French Revolution. I remember looking at French Impressionism, and I remember looking at works of Manet. I remember then being absolutely blown away when we looked at Picasso. I remember it was a moment of real kind of genuine surprise. So, oh my goodness, we can do anything. And it was very liberating to see that. And I would go home, and my folks still to this day will say, "Oh, we don't understand your abstract stuff, Mike. We like your more realistic stuff, but I don't really get it." And so I think that played a part in me. I think everybody kind of has this inbuilt desire for acceptance and a pat on the back. So I've all my life I've had this play going on in my work between realism and expressive abstraction. and I'll talk more about that in another video, but it's a really interesting play between those two extremes. The other thing that my sixth form art tutor did, which was again a little bit left field, a little bit of a surprise, he ran a Morris dancing group called South Downs Morris. Now this Morris dancing group was not like the vast majority of Morris dancing groups out there back then. It was full of art students for a start. It was run by an art teacher, and it was full of art students from 3, 4 of us, I think it was, from the sixth form art group. There was another tutor who I think was a geography tutor at the sixth form college, and then the rest of the team, most of the rest of the team was made up by former students who were then at Brighton Art College. So whereas the average age of most Morris dancing groups around the country would have been, I don't know, 50, 60, and they were kind of big guys, tended to always have a beer in one hand and either a sheep's bladder in the other, or a hat covered in so many badges it was hardly liftable. So there were these old folkies. Now we spent 2 or 3 years virtually every weekend touring the country, going to dance at festivals, folk festivals. And we turned up and we were this ragtag bunch of young art students made up of hippies, rockers and punks. And yeah, we turned up and it was quite chaotic because there was certainly a couple of the guys in the group encouraged us all to be really quite anarchic at these events. Now the idea of Morris dancing and anarchy going together is perhaps a strange concept, but I remember at the time the Pogues had just really kind of come on the scene, and Shane MacGowan with his smashed out teeth was singing about getting drunk and causing a riot. And so we kind of did the same in the Morris world, if you can believe that. And so why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because the experience really opened my eyes to very alternative ways of being, alternative belief systems, alternative ways of expressing yourself, and the fundamental idea that you can do anything. So there you have it. That was my personal journey as a young artist, from 4 or 5 with my briefly held girlfriend going over the line in my colouring in book, through to my first discovery of a real artist, namely Picasso, when I was at sixth form college. If you've enjoyed hearing me chat about art, then please subscribe, and then you will be able to see more videos. I will be doing more videos about the artistic process, about my artwork, about specific pieces, and I will be talking about how we can access more creativity within ourselves, within our lives, permit ourselves to be more creative generally. So if you'd be interested in watching any more or listening to me rabbit on, then please subscribe. Thank you very much for watching.